We are also going to hear from NTSB board member Bella Dinar about any progress that's been made to implement recommendations stemming from the investigation into the sinking of the El Faro cargo ship, which tragically was lost in a hurricane and should have never been steered into the path of that oncoming hurricane. Rochelle Ham is in the audience today to honor her husband Frank's memory, an El Faro crew member. And since his death, Ms. Ham and other El Faro families have left no stone unturned to improve maritime safety. And like the families, I think a lot of us think we do need to do a better job of making sure ships have access to the most up-to-date weather information. They didn't on El Faro. And that they have the best lifeboats and life-saving equipment. They didn't on El Faro. Vessels ought to properly be inspected to have that safety equipment. So welcome, Mrs. Ham. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both the Coast Guard and the National Transportation Safety Board have made a number of recommendations to address the El Faro sinking. Obviously, it traveled right into the path, as I said earlier this morning, into the path of an oncoming hurricane. From the recommendations, what do you believe are the most important issues to address? Any one of you?
I'll start off, Senator Nelson. Thank you for your question and your support of NOAA, as we just discussed yesterday. Part of it is improving our hurricane forecasts and our predictions of intensity and tracks. And we made great strides, as said in my opening statement, at NOAA and the National Weather Service in doing that. And I recalled about our track accuracy being the most accurate for our hurricane track forecasts by about 25% over the last 5 years. So since the El Faro went down in 2015, we've really looked hard at our hurricane forecast improvement program that is codified in the Weather Act, and we're going to continue to move forward and improve in that lane.
Ms. Dean Czar, tell me, the problem with El Faro, as I understand your report, is that it didn't get the most up-to-date weather information, and it certainly didn't have the best safety equipment, which I guess would involve the Coast Guard. I mentioned earlier the enclosed lifeboats. They were not there. So what do you think?
Thank you, Senator Nelson, for that question. Yes, one of our recommendations from the NTSB is that all lifeboats, all seafaring vessels of this size, be equipped with enclosed lifeboats. The El Faro was 40 years old, and the lifeboats that were on it were already out of date as of 30 years prior. But because there was not regular review of that part of the vessel, they were not able to make use of the latest lifeboat equipment that was required by the Coast Guard.
Well, either you or Admiral Fagan, what about the fact that the El Faro was getting dated weather reports? They were not up-to-date reports. What do we do about that? Admiral?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I would like to just compliment the NTSB with regard to how thorough and transparent the investigation into the El Faro was. It's certainly a tragedy for the families who lost their family members. The lifeboats on the El Faro, while dated, were in compliance with the regulation that applied to the vessel. Because of the age of the vessel, the lifeboats would have been grandfathered. Lifeboats are, as other safety equipment, are very much a part of the inspection and oversight that the Coast Guard overseas with regard to U.S. vessels. The totality of the report and the recommendations, there are a number of key recommendations in the report. The Coast Guard and NTSB and others are taking that report seriously and moving to ensure that we've implemented recommendations and then ensured safety for our dedicated mariners at sea.
What about the up-to-date? How are we going to ensure that ships that sail when there's a storm brewing are getting the up-to-date information, which the El Faro did not?
May I, Senator Nelson?
Please.
The information that the captain, our investigation found that the captain actually had the information when he set sail, and his decision was reasonable. Where the problem came into play was that as he was progressing, he was using a certain weather forecasting, the BVS, and it was hours behind, up to 6 hours behind. And the way it is transmitted is not done immediately. So we did make recommendations to encourage this type of weather forecasting to be transmitted in a more regular and timely manner. I think that the important point here is that the captain made a decision based on old weather information, and that's why he sailed into the path of the storm.
And the avoidance of that in the future is?
To ensure that there is more timely and accurate weather information and that it's provided in a way that cannot be missed by the crew.
Just to make sure that Senator Nelson and I understand exactly the information. Your report concluded that there was adequate information being made available to the captain, but he was really focused in on the wrong information. The SAT-C and the Weather Channel were giving information that was more accurate and more timely. Is that correct?
That is correct. The crew was looking at the SAT-C information. The captain was focused primarily on BVS, which was delayed, and the way it's transmitted to the captain, the BVS information was out of date by many hours by the time he received it. But in answer to Senator Nelson's question, when the captain left port, the information that he had, he made a reasonable decision based on the weather at that time to leave port.
Indeed. And are you saying there was a discussion on board the ship among crew members and between them and the captain as to which service to be more mindful of?
There was a discussion about the weather, sir, but the captain ultimately makes the decisions.
Crew members were recommending the SAT-C.
They were asking the captain to make a decision about, or ask him whether the ship should be taking an alternate route.
But did they mention that they were listening to other information?
They did talk about other sources of information. I don't know if they said specifically the word SAT-C or the names of the sources.
Okay. Well, thank you for.
That sounds like a communication problem between the captain and the crew. Is that what you thought, Ms. Denbar?
It's a choice of the crew to use different sources of information, and one of our recommendations is that because SAT-C comes directly to the bridge, the BVS information has to be emailed, and if you'd like it more regularly, you have to make that request to have more rapid information, which the captain did not do. So yes, there was a discrepancy in the type of weather information that they received, and when they communicated about it, the captain chose an alternate course.
Thank you very much.
I think that's tragic. I think that's just very tragic.